Well, let's continue to work together to create this new world that will be a better one in the end. We can maintain our resilience as we go through these changing times. Just recognize that it's all going to be okay in the end, and that we have the power within ourselves.
Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted to feel greater peace and flow in your life, and the entire world's, then do we have the HeartMath Experience show for you. Today I'll be talking with Howard Martin, one of the leaders and founders of HeartMath, co-author of the HeartMath Solution, and co-creator of the HeartMath Experience. And that's just what I want to talk with him about today, about global heart coherence, what it is, why it's so important, and why we need to get in coherence now more than ever. That, plus we'll talk about magnetometers, compassionate latitude, quick coherence, attitude breathing, social coherence, collective heart coherence, and what in the world Illumina and Burning Man have to do with anything. So welcome back to the show, Howard. Are you ready to shine?
Michael, it's such a pleasure to be with you. I always enjoy being on your show, and it's been too long. I'm glad to be back now, especially during these interesting and challenging times that we're living in today. And so to you and for everybody who's watching this, wherever you are, whenever you're watching, greetings, and I hope that you gain something from your time today through Michael and I's conversation.
Woohoo! And we almost had a hard time starting this because we were just geeking out, talking about a lot of this fun stuff on the air, off air, and I'm going, maybe we should put this on air. So before we dive right into things, what is global coherence?
Well, global coherence represents, a higher level of cooperation between all the various systems that make up the world that we live in. And of course, that's between people especially, but it expands itself out into how governments and nations operate with each other, how various systems cooperate or don't cooperate with one another, whether it's finance, legal, you name it, a system, And as we individually become more coherent, more in touch with our deeper selves, our true authentic selves, the intelligence of the heart, that leads to more and more people beginning to operate in a way in which their heart's intelligence is leading their actions, their decisions, their thoughts, etc. Collectively, that finally ends up at global coherence. Now, global coherence is a goal. It's a vision. It's certainly got a long way to go before we could say that the world operates more coherently, but I think it's headed in that direction. And at HeartMath, for many, many years now, we've been facilitating people to make these shifts within themselves with that goal in mind of creating a more globally coherent world.
Do you see this time of, I like that you use the same word that I do, interesting time. Do you see this interesting time as us going more out of coherence or as a way of steering us into greater global coherence?
It's definitely steering us towards greater coherence. Yeah, it's going to have chaos. It's going to have confusion. The polarization, which we see a lot of already right now, is going to happen. There's going to be a lot of blame. There's going to be a lot of judgment, all the normal things that we go through when massive change happens. In the end, this is an extremely important time for us. We are resetting the way the world functions. It's a big shift in consciousness. It's a big shift that we've been waiting for a very long time. Yes, it's hard. I mean, I think guys like me have been on stages around the world for the last, 20, 30 years talking about the shift that's coming, the shift in consciousness, the new world emerging in the midst of the old one and all of that. Well, I don't think we could predict how that was going to happen. Yeah. And certainly I could not have predicted a global event of this magnitude. But here it is. And yes, it's creating suffering, chaos, confusion, but boy, it's opening people up. People are reassessing their lives. They're doing things differently. They are learning to cooperate in new and different ways. In many cases, even nations that don't like each other are having to work together, all, for the shared common goal of overcoming the pandemic situation. So there are many good things that are happening. And in many ways, I think what happened very quickly is that the world that we knew suddenly disappeared. Yes. And now we're faced with, what are we going to do to create a new one? And we don't know what the new one's going to be because we're creating it now as we go. And that's putting us in some very interesting places within ourselves in terms of what's important and what's not, in terms of how we're going to play or how we're not going to play. All that is adding up to a major shift in consciousness that will set a new baseline of how we function as a global society. Does it mean it's perfect? No, it's not one thing that makes the big shift happen and all of a sudden, poof, the world is a completely different place. But it's headed in that direction. Long answer to your question, but the short answer is yes, it's headed us in the right way.
Excellent. And so I want to dive into this from a global perspective. So I've had on Dean Radin last, probably about a year ago, the head of the Center for Noetic Sciences, and he looks at also peer-reviewed studies on a lot of this good stuff. And he talked about how at 9/11, they had random number generators going. And when the planes hit the towers and the towers went down, the random number generators stopped being anything but random.
What happened was the other way around, but that's Dr. Roger Nelson. Yeah, Dr. Roger Nelson, he's a close friend of us at HeartMath, close friend of our scientific team here at HeartMath. He created the random number generator network many years ago when he was a professor at Princeton. Random number generators are used in statistical analysis research is what they're used for. And he had one in his lab, and he noticed that every now and then this random number generator would be becoming a lot less random. It would be producing, data that was unexplainable. Michael, it's interesting. He could have just said, well, yeah, so what? But he had an intuitive insight. He wondered something. I've talked to him about this many times. He wondered, could it possibly be that people are affecting this computer device? It's not plausible. It makes no sense. But could it be true? So what he did is he set up a network of these things around the world. Mm-hmm. They're all over the world, and we have one here at HeartMath, for example. And they were networked back to his lab at Princeton. So he started looking at major planetary events that were happening. It could be the start of an Olympics. It could be like the death of Princess Diana, or, major events that were happening. And he would regularly see statistically different output from the random number generator network globally. Mm-hmm. Now, what the noetic sciences person was describing is this, and I have this in my live performances. I show this data in my live shows. It's like one day he went into his lab. It was about like 7:30 in the morning East Coast time, and he noticed the random number generator network was off the chart. It was producing data he'd never seen before, nothing even close. Statistically significant shifts going on in the random number generator network globally. At first, he thought that the system was broken. That something was wrong with this system. So he began to check it out and he began to analyze it, and there was nothing wrong with it. Right at the time when an airplane hit one of the World Trade Center towers, the random number generator network went off the chart, right at 9-something a.m. East Coast time. Now, it's interesting, and I show it because it implies something. I do make a point, though. Does it prove anything? And the answer to the question is no, it doesn't. The reason is because you cannot, there's no cause and effect understood there. In other words, nobody can explain how that could happen. There's no mechanism by which we can say that a major change in a planetary event could be impacting a computer device. Mm-hmm. But it is an interesting observation. I'll share another one with you, too, that correlates to the same question. We also looked at data from the National Oceanographic and Aeronautic Administration. Yeah. They measure a lot of things, and they measure something called space weather. They have 2 satellites in orbit, one on each side of our continent, the United States. And they're looking at things like solar winds, cosmic rays. They also look at the power in the geomagnetic field, the field that surrounds our Earth. So they're looking at geomagnetic field, and they're looking at the power spectrum. Now, that power spectrum will modulate during the course of a day and night. You'll see more power in that field in the day when the sun lights on it, things like that. So we looked at that data, and we found, whoa, look at this. This is crazy. It's like we could see that right at the same time that the planes were hitting the tower, there was a massive spike in the geomagnetic field. Massive spike. And then the days after it, the field had a lot more energy modulation in it than the days before, significantly different. And so the scientists, not me, but the scientists began to look at, well, what could have occurred naturally to create that? Was there something that happened in the solar world, in the solar flares or anything like that? There was nothing. They couldn't correlate it. They couldn't find any naturally occurring cause that would have made that spike and that subsequent change happen in the geomagnetic field. Again, I make the point, does it prove anything? The answer to the question, sorry, it's no. And the reason is there was no formal experiment set up. Nobody knew to look for that. It's observing something that took place. But you correlate that with what Roger Nelson's data shows, put that with the NOAA data, and you go, wow, something really significant happened at a specific moment or moments in time during that day. What was that? Well, to me, it was an output of mass human emotion, unlike anything we'd ever seen. More people were feeling strong emotion at that time than ever before in the history of the world. The reason more people were feeling it is because of our interconnectivity. People were aware of it. So billions of people all around the world were aware of this significant event happening, and they were feeling something strong. Variety of different emotions, I'm sure. But they were feeling something strong, and it's possible that that was creating a measurable effect in both the readings of the geomagnetic field and in Dr. Roger Nelson's random number generator network.
So let's go forward from there. Do you have your own magnetometers around the planet right now to look at coherence, or is it Roger's work?
No, we've taken it forward. Roger works with us, but we've created what's called the Global Coherence Initiative.
Yeah.
And we're creating global coherence monitoring sites all around the world. These sites are to take this work forward so that we can do experiments, so that the next time something like this happens, we have an experiment going on, right? So we can look at this data and information. These are devices that measure very subtle changes in the geomagnetic field, and also a field that correlates with the geomagnetic field. It's called the ionosphere.
Yeah.
And they're measuring changes in these two fields that are protective layers around the planet. And they're looking at changes that are happening all the time, and they're feeding that information back to our research labs here in Northern California. And they watch and look at this data. They use it for scientific research, especially looking at not so much how we are affecting the fields, but at this point, how the fields are affecting us. But they're also observing global events, just like Dr. Roger Nelson did. And there's nothing being published yet about the effects we may be having on the fields, because more and more data is being collected. But they're certainly finding interesting correlations between how the fields affect us and human health and human behavior.
So I want to address both of those. We're going to geek out on this a little bit. First off, I'm guessing things like solar flares have an impact on the ionosphere that have an impact on us. What have you been finding?
Absolutely. And it's a global effect, actually. What some of our studies have shown is that these effects are not just individualized. They're happening all across the planet in different people. That there are correlated changes occurring in emotional response and also physiological response. In one study that our scientists did, they had a large group of people, I think hundreds of people all around the planet in different locations that were willing to do this study for 6 months. And they wore portable recorders that were recording their heart rate variability, their heart rhythms. Yeah. And they were sent random surveys at different times, randomly on their, through the email, like answer this as soon as you can, and reporting on their emotional state, right? The surveys. And what we found was there's a global correlation happening. And it also correlated with changes occurring in solar activity. So what we were seeing was this mass synchronized effect that was taking place in humankind. These groups didn't know each other. They were in different locations, the different cultures, different parts of the world. And then one of the most interesting things, Michael, that that the data showed was something that I saw in Dr. Roland McCready, the director of research, in a presentation that he did. The first time I saw it, I went, this is amazing. And what it was is these individual groups would get together and do heart-focused meditation called a heart lock-in together. And he was showing the data of how synchronized those people were the day before they did the heart lock-in and the day after. And it was night and day. Night and day on the synchronization between those people.
All around the planet.
Yes. In the individualized group. So they did, they were just one level of synchronization, then they do a heart lock-in. It goes back and measure it the next day, and there's a lot more synchronization. So as they began to become more individually coherent, it affected the group coherence in some way. And so there was a correlation there as well that was amazing to see.
Can you tell anything from your data and from your equipment of anything going on at this particular time as we're going through a global event? It's not quite the spike of a 9/11, but it certainly is a global warble, to say the least.
That's for sure. Well, it's a good question, and I don't have that answer for anyone today. Our scientists are very judicious and very methodical at what they will put out, and even to us, even to people like me. A person like myself is on interviews, on shows. I have a platform, in a sense, to talk about HeartMath. And if I'm talking about it, they want to make sure that whatever I'm talking about is valid and scientifically proven. So they may be observing a lot of things right now, but I'm sure that would take data analysis time as well to see it. I would not be surprised, however, if we did not see some interesting readings that were occurring, because nothing like this has ever happened in our world before. This is an unprecedented event, and I'll tell you why. It's like it affects so many people at the same time in a very similar way. Yes, when 9/11 happened, it was a big deal. But, you think about that. That was something we were observing. Unless we were living in New York, unless we were right there, we were just observing it. In this situation, we're not just observing it. We're being affected directly by it. We're living it. Not only that, this is global. I think there's something, as of right now, as we're doing our time together, there's something like 2 billion people that are in some shelter-in-place modality right now. 2 billion people. So this is a mass event, and it's a similar event. When we talked before I went on the show, you described your situation, I described mine. It was pretty much the same. When I'm on calls with international partners I have around the world, whether it's Brazil, whether it's Greece, whether it's London, wherever it is, and I ask them what's up, they describe exactly the same thing. Of how their life is and what they're doing and how societies function and where they are with reopening and all that stuff. It's the same. So never before we had a global event this big where everybody was experiencing something similar that not only were we observing, but that we were active participants in. That's huge. And I don't think it's ever happened before.
And it begets the question, well, we know the answer to this, but I'm curious as to your take. Emotions don't stay inside of us. They radiate out over the entire planet, don't they?
They do. We radiate emotions through our electromagnetic field produced by the heart, our magnetic field, and probably other fields too, but we can measure the magnetic field. You see, each and every one of us produces bioelectricity produced by the heart. Heart produces by far the most bioelectricity of any part of our body. It's strong enough that it creates a field of energy that surrounds us in 360 degrees. It extends outside of the skin about 3 feet. And it's magnetic energy. It can be measured. It's like measured with magnetometers, that measure magnetic fields. So we're producing these magnetic fields. Now, magnetic fields contain information. I'll give you an analogy. A cell phone. Your cell phone's producing a magnetic field. And the phone call you make, the text you send, the picture that you put out is actually imprinted in that field. Now, in terms of us, the human being, that magnetic field produced by our heart is being imprinted by what we're feeling, our emotions. Not what we're thinking. Yeah. It's deeper than that. It's what we're really feeling. Someone can say, you can ask someone, hey, how you getting along? And they go, oh, I'm doing great. Well, underneath that, maybe, 30 seconds ago, they were processing something like crazy, that was, about something they were upset about or afraid of or insecure about or whatever. But when you ask them the question, they'll say one thing. But at the deeper level, those emotions are being imprinted in that field, and that field is broadcasting. Now, our scientists and scientists who study this type of subject say that this is just the most conservative measurement we could possibly make. The fields are probably much, much larger and dynamic than just this field we're measuring with magnetometers. So what that adds up to is that 7.2, whatever it is, billion of us on the planet are constantly emitting imprinted fields that are being imprinted by what we're really feeling, not what we think we're feeling.
Yeah.
And this adds up to this, what I called it in my first book that I wrote with Doc Childry, the HeartMath Solution. I called it the consciousness climate.
That's the weather. That's the weather channel that I want to watch.
Yeah. Well, back in 1999 when we preached that book, we call it the consciousness climate. It's this field of information that we're all sort of living in. It's being generated by the true feelings of the 7-point-some billion of us who are living on the planet right now.
And we can affect this climate on an individual basis, can't we?
Absolutely, and it's the highest level of responsibility that we have. there's one thing we can all do, and many are doing right now during this time of the pandemic, and that's to put out more coherence from within ourselves. And what that means is actively generating more compassion, more true care, helping to make things easier for other people as we go through these times, putting those heart qualities out, whether it's just how you walk in the world, how you greet someone, or your meditations or the personal growth practices that you use, but generating more of that kind of emotional state and imprinting the consciousness climate with that is a high form of service. And it helps more than people can know or see. We can't measure all of that. We're measuring some of it. But my belief is that's the biggest and most important service that I can do, and that any of us can really do, is to carry ourselves in that way. And that's what's going to help us get through this thing with more poise and more ease and more grace.
Thank you. And so I want to talk about the intelligence, the heart, and heart coherence. So I woke up, maybe it was 2 months ago now, and stuff had just started going down in this country. And you wake up in the morning, and the best description that I had was, it felt like a freaky tiki Christmas. It felt like Christmas because all of a sudden everybody is at home, they're not at work, which should feel lighter because everybody's home. But there was this field of nervousness that was palpable. You could do a backstroke in it. I immediately grabbed my heart coherence device. I'll probably put a link to this thing at the end. And I'm going, dear God, help me. And I'm looking on my phone at this beautiful app that you have, and I had never done worse. What was going on in this field of energy that we're swimming in?
Well, certainly, this was a major shock for everybody. As I said, the world that we knew was suddenly disappearing. We were all told to go home. We were told, that the highest form of service we could do to come together was by staying away from each other.
Yes.
Which is like, in a certain way. And there we were. And of course, that's going to create a lot of uncertainty. Uncertainty can be uncomfortable. It causes that anxiousness. It can cause us the feeling that you had in yourself, Michael, that was palpable around the entire planet, as we all were being put in this situation of the unknown, of what's this really mean? How long is it going to go? What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to society? What's going to happen to my family? What's going to happen to my friends? All these were questions swirling in our consciousness. Of course, there's no better time when we reach a place like that than to slow things down as best we can, to slow down the vibratory rate of our mind and our emotions, and find a place of more inner security and more stillness inside, and then begin to look at what's happening. And so it was pushing a lot of us, including me, to go deeper on all that. We were having to use the tools that we had. And in my case, sure, HeartMath. But whatever people were using that they had been using before to try to find a little peace inside, to take themselves deeper within, that came back up pretty strong for a lot of people as well. It's like, now is the time to start practicing some things that I've been practicing, but with more earnestness and more meaningfulness, because now is a big need for all of that.
What's the intelligence of the heart?
Well, it's a core aspect of who we are. It's the core of our authentic self. It's the intelligence that we have, that we do experience at times in our life, often randomly, but it's highly intuitive. It's high speed. It gives us sort of an inner knowingness that bypasses a lot of the logical, linear, back and forth ping pong game that we often have to use to reach an understanding. It's really the birthplace of the emotional qualities that we know are the ones we enjoy the most and the ones that regenerate us the most. Emotions often associated with the word heart, like care, compassion, love, non-judgment, kindness, those kind of things. It's a place, Michael, that we often go to inside when we're forced to. When we're faced with challenges, personal challenges in our life that don't seem to have answers, and we begin to dig a little deeper, looking for something, right, to give us a way through. And often we make contact with what I call the intelligence of the heart, and that's when our inner dialogues begin to change, and we begin to feel as if there is some hope, and there is a place that we'll get to where this shall pass, kind of a feeling. All that adds up to this intelligence that we have that really operates off what I would call the values of the heart, opens us up to more intuitive contact, allows us to see into ourselves and to see into others and to see in decisions differently. And it allows us to discriminate choices in a new and more dynamic way, more efficient way, really. So that intelligence adds up to creating a more flowing life in a way, a life that has more flow to it, less rough edges, that moves us along in our own growth. It accelerates us in our own development of our own consciousness. And of course, there's always going to be a manifestation of that on the outside, and what we do in the world, how effective we are, what our relationships are like. All those things are a byproduct of it. The last thing I'll say about it would be just a simple statement that in all these years of exploration of heart in my life, which is my life's work, what I've come to know is that my heart is my own best friend. It's really the most reliable guide I have to making decisions in my life, whether they be big ones or little ones, that end up increasing my fulfillment. So it's my own best friend that's there to help me find more and more fulfillment.
Thank you, thank you. And when we're listening to that intelligence of the heart, when we drop out of that chatter and start to dive in, we start to get more into a state of coherence. What is coherence? What is electromagnetically going on with our heart? And why is it so important?
Well, let me preface my answer to anyone who's viewing right now that may not be as familiar with HeartMath. We're a system of tools, techniques, and technology, all underpinned with scientific research. And that's one of the things we're most known for, is this large body of scientific research that's happened over the last 30 years. If you're interested in science, you can go to the nonprofit part of HeartMath, heartmath.org, and you can click on the research tab, and you'll stay busy for a really long time, because it's over 400 peer-reviewed research studies done on relative aspects of HeartMath. So the term coherence represents something that we measured. Early in our research, Michael, we were trying to figure out, what the heart might be doing more than pumping blood. And what we found was it was an information processing center in the body, and that it was sending information throughout the entire body, brain, and all the major systems were getting important information from the heart. Now, we started trying to figure out how to measure that information, and we did. We were able to measure it by looking at changes in our heart rhythms. It was an already existing medical analysis process measuring heart rate variability. So we took it a step further. We said, okay, when heart rate variability is optimal, when it's really, when heart rhythm patterns are running in these smooth and ordered patterns, what happens inside the system? And we found that when that's occurring, that all the major body systems begin to synchronize to this ordered rhythmic beating pattern of the heart, which means we're healthier, bodies operate more efficiently. And then the signals that the heart is sending, especially to the brain, begin to open up the higher perceptual centers of the brain. The neocortex, becomes more active. We get smarter. We can see into things differently. And so the term for this, when all this syncs up, is called coherence. And there's actually a medical term for it. It's a long word, hard for a Southerner to say, but I'll try it. Psychophysiological coherence.
I like it. You did good.
Yeah, you go. Pretty good, huh? I've learned over these years. So it's a highly ordered state that's physically very healthy. It's a high-performance state. We train athletes, and I know, Michael, you've been a professional athlete in your time. We train athletes to become more coherent. It improves reaction speed time, visual field, emotional self-regulation, a lot of things that are important for creating that extra edge that an athlete often needs. The psychological part of coherence is that you don't get there without first experiencing a regenerative, uplifting emotion. That's one of the keys to getting more coherent. Once you have experienced emotion, let's say appreciation, for something in your life, other similar emotions become more readily available. They start to flow. Yeah. I mean, you start feeling more caring towards someone instead of being so judgmental. You feel more balanced, more poised, more at ease. And so those emotions begin to flow. So you're physically operating in a more efficient way, and you're emotionally operating in a way that's more regenerative. And that's what coherence is. And it happens first in us individually, right on down to the biological level where we can measure that.
And so I use this device right here. I plug it into my phone. Well, it's
right.
Bluetooth.
So you're an app, yeah.
Yeah, and I can actually see how much I am in coherence with my heart. What is going on there?
Well, what you're describing is the inner balance trainer.
Yeah.
And what Michael was just showing everyone was the sensor. You take that sensor, you connect it to your ear, it's a Bluetooth sensor. That pairs with an app called the Inner Balance Trainer app.
Yep.
That app is really, really cool. It uses very sophisticated technology to measure heart rate variability, measure your heart rhythms. It then uses a patented algorithm to analyze those heart rhythms and score them for how coherent they are. So you get a coherence score that's happening and updating every 5 seconds, and you learn to watch the modulations, and I'm getting more coherent, less coherent, et cetera, et cetera. And at the end, it gives you a reading on the average coherence score that you had during that session. So I gamify mine. I want to increase my average coherence score, and I set baselines of what my average needs to be, and I work towards getting more and more coherent. There's also a lot in the app. I could describe it, but I'd rather you just take our time to talk about maybe other things and have everybody go to HeartMath.com when they're ready and just click on Inner Balance Trainer. You can read all about it. You can see videos. You can get a better sense of what it does. What it's really cool about it is it trains you how to become more coherent. And then you carry that coherence forward into your daily life. You don't have to walk around with a sensor on all the time. You use it to train your system to become more naturally coherent, which has an outplay in how you play the game of life.
Thank you. So I want to bring this back to global coherence. And
Okay.
I'm wondering whether or not we are all sitting together, whether we're doing a mass meditation, whether we're doing a heart coherence practice on our own, or simply helping thy neighbor. Is there a global tipping point we can hit as we shift by, it's almost like we're raising, this is going to get into a non-scientific term, please forgive me, raising our frequency during this time?
That's what's happening. And so we are trying to hit a tipping point. And this virus is going to be here until we do. I'll talk non-scientifically now, if I may. You started it. Now I'll go in another direction.
Go, boy.
To me, the coronavirus is like a consciousness itself. It's like its own thing. It's a consciousness that's here on planet Earth to help us create change, and it's gonna be here until it gets its job done. What is that job? Was to create a tipping point that creates what I called earlier in our conversation a new baseline. Doesn't mean that total shift. It means we notch it up to the next baseline of human awareness and consciousness. And that virus is going to hang around until we hit that baseline. How do we hit the baseline? Well, it starts with what I do. What am I doing? How am I meeting this challenge? What attitudes am I holding? What work am I doing on the inside to be a better Howard Martin? How am I sharing that? Whether it is, I loved your term, being kind to the neighbor, or in my meditations. And what am I doing to make this next baseline shift? As we take more responsibility for that, and as more people do it, the baseline shift will come faster. Now, the good news is it doesn't have to be by even close to majority. A small amount of people operating at another level of their own personal coherence can affect large change. I'll say that again. A small number of people operating from, their next level of their own personal coherence can affect a much larger change. And so as we begin to continue to come together in these new cooperative ways, the world will continue to go, and there'll be its ups and downs and all arounds. And when we watch the news, we're going to see the fighting, we're going to see the polarization, we're going to see all that. But underneath that, there's a bigger shift going on, and it's being facilitated by people that are choosing to approach this differently. And while that may never show up on the news, it's happening on the bigger news. And that bigger news is what's going to help us move through this time period. And it's going to have an impact on what this virus does and doesn't do and how long it sticks around.
To take this to its essence, what you're saying is one happy person in the room can affect the whole room.
You talk a lot simpler than me, Michael, but that's true. Yeah, and we've seen that time and time again. A guy with a smile like yours, you can walk into a room and people are going to feel different when you show up. Just because you have that energy about you. That's right. And probably why people love to watch your show is because of that. They feel something from you. It's a positive thing that you put out. And it's an uplifting. It's got a regenerative and intelligent uplifting quality to it. And I think that's true. One person can offset a whole room. Well, a small number of people can offset a whole planet. I don't have a number. I mean, I know there's theories around that. I think they're difficult to pin down to any specific number, but I'm just saying a small percentage of society can really help to offset a lot of density. And that density can be burned off by those people really coming at it from a different place. The mitigating factor on that is how meaningful we are, how real it really is. Putting out good thoughts is good, but getting deeper and really generating more of that deeper, true heart coherence that we have has another effect, to me, a bigger effect than just thinking good thoughts. But if that's what you can do, just do that, because it all adds up and all counts.
So if we choose to be extra conscious, extra aware, extra careful during this time, and I think I'll only speak for myself, it's hard for even the best of us. At times we will find ourselves pulled out, knocked off balance, and we get to bring it back. What is a simple tool we can use to get ourselves, to consciously bring ourselves back quickly?
When you find yourself there and you're spinning out, it's getting to you, you're going down a road that you don't really want to go. It can be hard, but you can pause that if you want to. If it's meaningful intent, again, you focus your attention right in the area of your heart. You just bring your attention right there and you breathe through that area. Imagine it if your breath is flowing in and out through that area in the center of your chest. And as you breathe like that, you just set the intention to move through this quickly. A term you can use is difficult sometimes to really understand the power of it, but you can say done, D-O-N-E, done. Like, nope, I'm not going there. This is done. I'm not going to go down this road. I'm taking care of it now. Now, it may come back. It may have more intensity. It's not necessarily just poof going to go away, but it can certainly help to slow down that process. And just focus in the heart and breathe through that area, and then come in with a meaningful attitude of moving through it. Maybe a word like done can help to trigger that. And you can move through a lot of the smaller things quickly. For me, it's more subtle than that during these times. A term that I use for myself on this was sometimes I get to a place what I call pandemic fatigue.
Yes.
And it's not that I'm having a big problem. It's not that I'm overreacting to the things that I see. It's just like the ongoingness of it begins to create a weight in me. You know what I'm saying? It's like a weight of that. And that's more subtle. It's harder to identify. But if I'm on my game, I can feel it. I can see it. And then I recognize, okay, have your moment, Howard. But, you need
that's me. I'm like, it's okay. Have your moment. And then we're rolling right back to it.
Well, let's go right back to it and pick that frequency up. Let's pick the vibration in my mind and emotions and heart back up another level. So it moves me above that weighty feeling and allows me to continue to make the most of these times.
Have you been able to, and how would others use it? Because one of the positives that I see is actually I see the wavering, the spinniness, the difficulty as a, hey, wake up. Hey, wake up. And if we can actually catch that, we can use either that feeling of fatigue or feeling of spun to actually take it to a higher level, take it even higher. Right.
Well, in a sense, I'll characterize it this way. We're waking up from a long sleep, now standing at the doorway of a new world. And that's where we are. And so, yeah, we're going to keep taking it up and up. But we've been, operating in mechanical patterns for a really long time, and those patterns got broken. So we're waking up now from a long, long sleep. And we have an opportunity in this moment right now. We're doing it on the go. It's not like it's, it's being created each and every day as we begin to reshape the new world and what it's going to be. And so the doorway is open for a lot of opportunity and a lot of growth, and to create something that we haven't had before that's better. And I think we're going to do that. I think that we're taking that opportunity to heart. I'm not the only person that says things like I just said. There's people that say it all the time. I hear it in casual conversation. I was talking to a woman working in a financial institution about a house refinance. She lives
rates are
back.
Historically low.
She's so just a regular lady, doing her job, and she said something like, I hope things don't go back to the way they were.
They can't.
You see what I'm saying? It's in the air.
Yes,
she says, well, this pandemic's really not good, but it's causing me to think different, and I hope things don't go back to the way they were. So that's in the air of people saying, let's take this and turn it into something new.
What I really like is as you joked about it at the beginning, the best thing we can do to come together is to stay apart. And I'm going to flip that on its head, which is the best thing that we can do. I'll continue what you said. The best thing that we can do to come together is stay apart, because if we know one thing about humanity, that which you take away from us, we're going to want much more. And I'll put in there, and at a higher level.
Yeah, absolutely. And think about how people have come together in different ways. You know, at HeartMath, we've been operating our businesses virtually, so most of the staff's not here. And I was talking to one of our guys who's the head of operations the other day. He said he'd never spent as much time with his team as he's spending with them now on Zoom. But they're having more meetings and more time than he had when they were in the office.
So tell me about that. It's a question that I had written down earlier. So I love the synchronicity. Tell me about what I'm going to call here Zoom coherence, because I have been doing massive boot camps with people where I get us into this same frequency, and we're all like beat red and on fire as a group from all around the world.
Well, what it's showing is that we're learning to fill the space. There's a distance now between us that's being mitigated through technology like Zoom. But what we're really doing is more than just Zoom. We're learning to fill the space. We're learning to create the connections more energetically than we would physically. So that's a new skill emerging. We're getting new practice that we don't even realize is happening. We're building a new muscle, so to speak, in how we energetically connect. And so we're finding that, wow, guess what? There's a connection that happens beyond time and space. We see it through Zoom and see it through a call like we have today. And there are going to be people watching this that hopefully feel this conversation that we have. They're going to be watching it down the road because it's going to be posted somewhere. And people are going to be looking at this thing 6 months from now. But does that matter? Can they feel us and feel what's happening right now as you and I are together in this medium? So this it's really interesting. I'm glad you brought it up, because what we're doing, again, I'll use the term again, we're learning to fill the space energetically.
Yeah.
And that's a skill that represents new consciousness. Because after this pandemic is over, we're going to still be left with that kind of gain. We're going to have learned how to do that better. And that doesn't mean we're only going to do Zoom for the rest of our life. That's not the point. But when we are with each other, we will be able to connect differently. And to me, at a deeper level, as a result of the practice we're getting through the way we have to communicate today.
My brain has just completely left the room, and I have this image of a brain and of different neurons firing. And now, since you mentioned new consciousness and the planet and everything's coming together, I'm seeing new neural connections between humanity. I've often thought of humanity as one individual, and the brain or the heart. But forgive me for going to brain, because it really is heart. But we're making these connections, these synapses, and even after the stimulus, COVID-19 goes away, those connections will still be there.
Correct. And the ability to create new connections will have been increased because we will have learned how, either consciously or unconsciously. But we'll have a different skill available to us that people will begin to utilize. So the world will come together in a new way.
Woohoo! It begets the question, what does new consciousness mean to you? Or what do you feel is coming? Because you dive into this daily. This is your life.
Well, I don't know, Michael. It's a pretty wide question. Consciousness itself is not really truly understood. I think that I'll take it back down to the street. It just means that we'll treat each other differently. That there'll be a bit more openness to dissolve differences and to have more acceptance for differences. I think there can be another openness to new ideas and to change. The consciousness that we will have will be one that's more exploratory, that has, in some ways, a new sense of adventure in it. We will have a new level of confidence because we had been through something together that we finally got past. That confidence will give us a new understanding of what's maybe possible and what we can do. It will have shown us that we can do more than maybe we think we can do. These are all little pieces and aspects of the new consciousness. There's no one way to describe it. And there'll be more than that. There'll be things that I don't know. There'll be things that surprise me. That's the beauty of it. But I think we'll feel stronger. We'll feel more resilient. We'll feel more open and more caring. And I think that more of the natural qualities associated with heart will be manifested more consistently in daily interactions.
Woohoo! To summarize, we are one, and we are capable of far more than we ever imagined.
And it's heart time on the planet. I'll add that.
Awesome, 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 awesome. All right. On that note, I'm guessing I will ask A, do you watch the news? And I'm guessing I know the answer to it. But B, when we hear hateful, spiteful, thisful, thatful stories out there, can we actually use this as a positive tool to actually get ourselves back in our heart and help heal everyone?
Yeah, it's an exercise. Watching the news to me is probably important right now, but watching it from a certain angle of view or perspective is also just as important. I try to watch it. My wife will say, "Let's cut on, the news," and I go, "I don't want to watch that again." And she goes, "No. It's time for us to watch it and put out more compassion." So she turns it into an exercise, so we're watching this and we're trying not to get identified with it, go, "Those idiots," or "There's this, that, and the other. Can you believe this?" And, go into all that stuff that goes on in the news when we watch it. And just take another more neutral view of it and just put more care and love out as we watch it, more compassion, more qualities of the heart as we watch the news. And so that allows me to watch it without it draining me.
Mm-hmm.
It allows me to observe so that I can serve. I mean, I want to know what's going on out there, and I need to keep up with that. And so whether it's through the news or through various interviews and things that I get involved in or on or et cetera, I try to keep a pulse of what people really are feeling. And, we do a call every other week now with all the HeartMath trainers and coaches around the world, and that's amazing to hear what's going on with them and what they're feeling. And there's people on this call that have had the virus, there's things like that. So, it's a learning process. And I use that learning not to create triggers that cause me to become more biased or more polarized in my thinking. I use it to educate me on where I can apply my compassion.
We were talking off air a little bit about exercise. And I'm wondering how you're using exercise, which is really a metaphor for life, using that outer practice for your inner world.
Well, I'm getting a lot more exercise as a result of this, and I also see other people are as well. I see so many people in my neighborhood where I live that I didn't even know lived here. They're always out walking, and
Yes.
I see them walking, and their kids are out there, and they're, with the kids on strollers and all that. And so I see that more people are exercising more. Exercise is important. The reason I do exercise is not so I can become more physically fit, so to speak. I use it because the primary fitness that I need to have is inner fitness, the fitness on the inside of me. Physical exercise helps with that. It helps to ground energies in me. It helps to move me into new energies. And it also helps to keep the body that I need as healthy as it can be, so that I can continue to grow, continue to learn, continue to change, and continue to serve. So for me, exercise is something I do to create more fitness on the inside. And if there's an externalization of that, most of your listeners viewers can see I'm a bodybuilder. If there's an external manifestation of that, then so be it. But it really facilitates my inner growth. That's why I do exercise.
During your exercise, are you using it as any sort of a meditation or a time to drop down, or is it simply just a time to diffuse?
Both. I mean, sometimes when I'm pumping, I'm going to put out heart so that the physical exertion is also helping to create a radiational effect.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm using it just to let things go. As you know from our conversations, I enjoy riding bicycles. You were a pro or semi-pro at least, or I think a professional, professional cyclist in Europe and all kind of places. When I ride my bike, there's a sense of freedom. It's a sense of releasing. It's a sense of calm and casual that I get out of it. I like to feel the wind blowing, on me. I like to feel the maneuvering of the bike. I like the flow that it all has and all that. So it can be both. Sometimes it's a chance to do some more inner work, and sometimes it's a chance to just let that cycling experience provide a balance and regeneration that I need.
A flow state. I like it. So from there, tell me about HeartMath Experience. I had a chance to dive into this today. is really cool.
Yeah, well, last year we wanted to create I would just generically call a front door into HeartMath. If you wanted to start with HeartMath, where would you start? And to do that, we wanted to create something where people learned, but we also wanted it to be something that people would be entertained by and enjoy. So when I started the project, I had a lead role in creating it, and when I started it, I wasn't sure where it was going to go. But what happened was, Michael, is that it took on cinematic qualities. So many people see it as a movie.
Yes.
It's divided into chapters. It lives on a learning management system, so it's in 9 chapters, and so it has a course construct, and you learn 5 HeartMath tools and techniques in it. And you learn about some of the HeartMath science in it. You also learn about social and about global coherence, all in these 9 chapters. But as you're watching it, it's beautiful. I'm involved with other people that created this to make it feel like something that it would open your heart. In other words, people had to feel it. I didn't want people just to try to learn another course. Who wants one of those? I wanted them to learn as they felt. And so it's got a beautiful cinematic quality to it, and at the same time, you learn practical skills. Now, what happened was we released it in early this year, and we licensed it to some big distributors. We did a lot of stuff with it. It really took off very quickly, and we were selling it, and it was doing really well. And then we were getting lots of requests to help out with the pandemic during these times. So we started doing this group meditation here and this interview there, and we started doing all this stuff. And then we had a realization that maybe we better centralize this some more. Maybe we ought to come up with one central thing that we can do that sort of, this is our stamp, this is our gift. What can we do? So we decided to take this successful HeartMath Experience program and not sell it anymore, but to give it away to the world. So we put out a campaign. A lot of partners jumped on board. Lots and lots of information and messaging was sent to people all around the world. I went through a process of getting it subtitled in about 6 or 8 languages now. It's in places, things like German, French, Spanish, Greek, Dutch, Portuguese, Hindi.
Cool.
I did the whole thing so it could be global and got it all subtitled, and we put it out. And so hundreds of thousands of people have been watching this thing, and it was our gift to say this is tools and techniques and an uplifting experience, if nothing else, that you can have right now while you're sheltered at home, while you're dealing with the pandemic. And that's going to be our gift to the world right now. We decided we'd do it for, through the end of May, but now we've decided we're even going to continue that. This isn't over. Now we're going through the process of trying to figure out during this next phase if we can learn how to somehow coexist with this virus. It's not going to go away anytime soon, and yet we can't stay, locked down as a global society forever either. So we're going to have to figure out how we're going to make this work. So there's a whole nother level of challenges that we have to deal with. So we're going to let it go for another month, at least to the end of June, where we're going to make it free to everybody. So anybody watching now, please go to heartmath.com. At the very top of that site, on the big banner where you can't miss it, it'll say, click here for your free HeartMath experience. You have to register. You have to go in, put in your email, and then it spits back a registration key. You go back in and you enter that registration key, and again, your information again, put the registration key in, and it unlocks the whole thing, and it's beautiful. And so you get the whole course, the whole HeartMath experience. It doesn't cost you anything at all. And that's our gift to the world right now. And it's the newest thing we had, the most robust, the most entertaining, the most beautiful that we had available to us. And again, we just said, whatever about the money right now, let's not worry about that. Let's just take what we think might be one of our best offerings for people, especially that don't know who we are, especially that, that don't have a big understanding of heart and all of that. Let's give that to them. And so sure enough, we know for a fact that like 40% of the people that have downloaded this thing now were never in touch with us before.
And what's coolest to me is, as this is the new paradigm, it is, how can I serve?
It was an amazing experience for me, Michael, because having had a lead role in this, and I enjoyed making this thing with all the various players. It was magical the way it unfolded, and I really was fulfilled by it. And then to get to this place to where all of a sudden I could give it away. I didn't have to be a businessman. I didn't have to worry about how many it sold or any of that stuff. That I could say, no, this gift, this HeartMath Experience, which was a gift to me to be able to do it. Now I can give that away to everybody in the world. That felt so good to be able to do that. I just, no more business here. This is just like take something that you love, that you enjoy doing, and then give it to the planet. And that in and of itself was a fulfilling gift that I got through this whole process.
Woohoo! I think I've got like 3 more questions, then we'll dive into a meditation. I can keep going on and on and on because this is so much fun. I believe we've all come here at this time. I think we all incarnated at this time because our energy, our frequency, our coherence matters, and matters now more than ever. How important is it that we serve at this time?
I have a belief that life works best when we're giving more to it than we're trying to take from it. And so service is always important. And right now, and never before has it been more important. And service shows up in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of big services where we get involved in big projects, or we're doing things. I mean, healthcare worker on the front lines. I mean, what amazing service that is. Or the scientists trying to figure out vaccines, or all kinds of ways in which people can serve right now. But if it's not that grandiose, as I said earlier, one of the best ways to serve is just through what you put out into the world, how you walk in the world. That's the biggest service right there, and we can all do that. We can all be kinder to one another. We can all have that as a way in which we live, and so I think that's the biggest service. Doing more of that is, again, how we're going to create this new and different world. We're co-creating it right now. The new world we're going to have is still undetermined. We're creating it. How will we create it? We create it through service. And life's going to work better when we give to it. It's going to feed back to us in a way that's going to provide more of what we truly want in our hearts, not just our minds.
Beautiful. And on that note, on serving, and I think about giving to it and also giving to our own hearts, something we're incredibly challenged to. How crazy is this? How about sending love to the virus?
Yes, I think that's important. Send love to the virus. It's not out to get us. It's not so much the enemy. If you see it through that angle, and that could sound pretty wide for somebody who's lost a loved one who's watching this, or somebody who's sick, or somebody whose job has been completely decimated. So I don't necessarily want to always go there, because people have different relationships to this situation depending upon how it's impacted their life. Right. But you get to the widest angle view that I can get to. I see it as something that's here for a positive reason, and that we should love it. And by loving it, it helps to move it on. Actually, if you want to get rid of it, we have to do things to so-called fight it, but we also need to begin to embrace it in some way. And through the field of love is the best way to embrace it. But that can be a stretch for people who are being impacted in more dynamic ways. And my compassion goes out to you, if that's you that you're watching, and Michael and I right now, to say that, yes, I have compassion for that, and I do understand. And I do think that the best way for us to get through this is to embrace these changes and embrace the virus itself as much as we can. And that's going to move it on more quickly.
Woohoo! So last question, then we'll dive into a meditation. Any last words of wisdom you want to share with people as we're going through this unprecedented time together?
Well, some things I'd like to reiterate, that we're standing at the doorway to a new and different world. That the one that we had 8 or 9 weeks ago no longer exists. I think we're past the shock and awe of that. I think we've done our shelter within, and now we're beginning to poke our noses out a little bit to see how the world looks and what we can do to interface with it. And there'll be new challenges that come up. As it goes through the process of its ups and downs, and it will go through more ups and downs, I would say, that we just need to continue to go back to our own core authentic self and source of self-security, our heart. And just apply the qualities of the heart with more meaningful intent. That's one of the best ways that we can go through this with less stress, more balance, more ease as we go. And watch things unfold. Observe it. And try not to over-identify with the ups and downs so much. Every day we can watch the news, and there can be just different flavors of the news, and ups and downs and all we go. Try to find a balanced place with that and just watch it unfold. And let's work together. Continue to work together. We already are, but let's continue to work together to create this new world. It will be a better one in the end. When, I don't know. My crystal ball's in the shop, and I can't go down to pick it up. So
mine's broken.
yeah, so I can't get down there to pick it up because I'm sheltered within. But somewhere in the not too distant future, we'll be past this one, and we'll be into something else and something different and new. And so just hang in there. Just recognize that it's all going to be okay in the end, and that we have the power within ourselves, which is already emerging, which will continue to emerge, that we can maintain our resilience as we go through these changing times.
Woohoo! And a giant hug, socially distant man hug until the time is right, Howard.
All right, maybe we'll see each other in July if I get to go do the Gaia-sphere event that we're scheduled to do in Gaia. I don't know if they're going to be allowing us to be there or not, but I know you live in Colorado, and I'll be at Gaia-sphere outside of Boulder to do a HeartMath program there that got obviously postponed, but they're still intending to try to do it at the end of July if there's enough flexibility in the societal constructs for that to make sense.
Yeah. Very, very cool. So would you mind leading us in any sort of coherent meditation at this point?
All right, let's do that. What we're going to do is we're going to make contact with our own heart's intelligence. We're going to increase our coherence individually, and then we're going to come together and we're going to use that as an opportunity to serve, to put that out into the energetic field environment to hopefully help to offset some of the density and struggle and stress that's happening in the world today. So to do that, let's go and do what we did a little while ago. For a short technique, I want you to focus your attention in the area in the center of your chest, the area of your heart. If it's helpful to get your attention there, you can put your hand or hands there on your heart. Now I want you to breathe naturally in a comfortable rhythm, but a little deeper than you normally would. And as you're breathing, I want you to imagine as if your breath is flowing in and out through the area of the heart, the area in the center of your chest. And we'll do that for just a little bit now. I want you to continue to breathe this way. And as you do, I want you to gently activate a regenerative, uplifting emotion. It could be appreciation for the good things taking place in your life, for the things you have in your life that you know are good. Maybe you can feel appreciation that way. Or perhaps you can feel the love or the care that you have for someone or something in your life. It could be a person. It could be a place. It could even be a pet. Love and care that you have inside. So make it a gentle process. Don't force that feeling. Continue to do that breathing through the area of the heart. Just feel that feeling as best you can. Now try to shift into a feeling of compassion. Not sympathy, not empathy, but compassion. Sympathy would be a feeling like I feel sorry for you. Empathy would be I feel your pain. And higher compassion is, I understand. Just feel a feeling of compassion, first of all, for yourself and for other people in your life, other people that you know. Expand that feeling to everybody who's watching this program, listening to this program, wherever we all are in the world, whenever we're watching, whenever we're participating. Just feel that interconnected experience that we're having that is not bound by the boundaries of time or of space. Now let's expand it and radiate it outward. Take our collective heart coherent state, fueled by compassion, and radiate that outward into the energetic field environment of consciousness on the planet to help lift the vibratory rate of everyone, to help them find and make peace with whatever challenges they're facing in their lives. We can close by acknowledging that no love is ever wasted. Every act that we do like this, individually or collectively, all counts. It all adds up. It all makes a difference, and it all comes back to us. Okay, thank you everyone for your participation.
Woohoo! Thank you so much, Howard. This has been phenomenal.
Well, it felt good to me too. Sometimes you do these things and I don't have a lot of overt feeling registration, but in this one, boy, I really felt it. I could feel the connection. I could feel the expansion in my heart. And, it feels good to be with you, Michael. You do wonderful work. And I always appreciate being on your program. Opportunity to hang out with you some, and then to have a chance to talk to the folks that that have been drawn to your work and your program. So I appreciate that opportunity a lot.
Oh, it so goes both ways, and I have a cheater stone here, where this stone I hold in my hand through the interview, and I go in a circle, breathing into the heart and out, and in and out. As I say, I send love.
I have 3 or 4 of them, these little things that people have given me that are meaningful. And I'll tell you, this is one that I don't hold much, but I'll give it to you and I'll tell you why it's important. Yes, it's just a goofy little red heart.
Please tell me.
About 2 years ago, I was speaking in Italy, in San Marino, Italy, and it was a large group there. And when we got through, they were doing the picture thing, where people come up and get their picture taken with you and all that. And the whole thing had been translated. My presentation had to be translated. I found in Italy, very, very few people spoke hardly any English in Italy, all translated. And so this family walked up to me, and they couldn't speak any English at all. And it was a man and his wife and a little boy, probably maybe 6 years old, and they just came up and they couldn't really speak to me. They just looked at me, and there was just a lot of love coming out of their eyes and hearts, and they wanted to get a picture taken with me. And that little boy handed me that heart. And I said, you know what? this is why I do what I do. You know, this kid felt something and he's giving it back. You know what I mean? He was there, whether he understood a word I said, it didn't matter to him. He wanted to give me this, and he made this heart for me, and he gave it to me. And I thought, well, you know, as I go through life and as I go through trying to do what I can to serve, then I always need to remember these things and remember that, as I said earlier, no love is ever wasted. It always counts, and it does come back. So I keep that little paper heart.
He gave you a piece of his heart. This is so cool.
He gave me a piece, that little boy in Italy gave me a piece of my heart. And, you know, I've thought about that. You know, Italy was one of the hardest hit countries during the pandemic. You know, they lost, percentage-wise, a tremendous amount of life. And they went through some of the most severe lockdown that anybody has had. And basically that country got shut down and is still mostly shut down. So I wondered about, you know, that little boy and his family, all the people there, you know, and recognized that was a moment in time. But it's little things like that trigger the memory. And then when I start complaining about my life or complaining about how tough it is or don't want to do this or don't want to do that and resisting this and resisting that, remember, wait a minute, dude, you know, that's why you got involved in this in the first place. Go back to that feeling.
Woo-hoo! Thank you, Howard, and thank you for sharing, and thank you to that little boy who gave you a piece of his heart that is just rocking cool.
Yeah. Well, I want everybody to go get the HeartMath Experience. And the reason is that experience we just had there, that type of meditative thing, there's more of that in the HeartMath Experience. And it's beautiful. It's the way it's done with the graphics and the images and the radiational quality that it has. You learn some things, and it'd be something fun for you to watch right now, you know, during a time like this, and something you carry something away with that I think will carry you forward in your life some. So that's what I like people to do that have watched. If you want to give a gift back to me, I'd like you to accept my gift to you. Just go get the HeartMath Experience.
And I didn't even get to talk to you about these skydivers that got into a state of coherence and all came together for the world's largest. To me, it was a what's the word? Sacred geometry.
Yeah, I met them too. I met them live. I spoke in Brazil last fall, and they came. You know, they set the Brazilian record for the most synchronized skydiving thing, and they couldn't get it done. These two people were HeartMath trainers in Brazil. There were skydiving people. One was a psychologist, one was a championship skydiver. And when they did it, they could never get it to work until they actually started practicing HeartMath techniques with the entire group. And then when they jumped, it was like they felt it, and they felt this thing. It's in the movie. It's in the HeartMath Experience, along with other stuff. You know, it's in there. But there's their stories in there, pictures of the skydiving, all that. So it's got a lot of interesting components to it. I forgot it was even in there till you just mentioned it to me. But yeah,
to me, it's such a perfect metaphor for life. We feel like we're falling. We feel like everything's falling apart, but you get into coherence, and what you find is it's actually all coming together.
That's right. It's pretty cool. Very cool.
Thank you. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, check out the HeartMath Experience, and begin changing the world through your heart today, and shine bright. Woohoo! Thank you, my brother. You outdid yourself this time.
So I want to thank you again for having me, and thank everybody who's taken their time, given their attention to listen to what we've had to say. And I hope that, you know, your life continues to move towards greater and greater fulfillment. If you're watching this, then you are a light worker. You're a light warrior, and I want to help. We offer everything from boot camps, mini masterclasses, full-on masterminds, and private one-on-one coaching with me. To find out more about our upcoming courses, simply visit InspireNationUniversity.com or click on the links below. And to find out more about coaching, simply visit InspireNationUniversity.com/coaching. We also have weekly YouTube live events with me where you can ask me your questions live, and YouTube premieres featuring me and our guests. Simply subscribe below and click on the bell icon to be notified of upcoming shows. I just had such a beautiful, heart-centered, heart-inspired, heartful, heart coherence interview with Howard Martin of HeartMath. Oh my God, I love Howard and love this interview. To check out more heart-filled interviews, click here, subscribe below, click on that bell icon to be notified of upcoming shows, YouTube premieres, and live events with me. And click on the link below to join us for our upcoming boot camps and classes. Would love to have you there. Thumbs up if you enjoy this. Leave your comments. We do our best to get back with everybody. Shine bright. Woohoo! Love you guys so much.